In the shop today, 2014 Nissan Sentra, here for front struts, passenger and driver. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get it done. You will be needing a few tools for this job: a 1/2 inch impact or a 1/2 inch breaker bar, 21 millimeter socket, 18 millimeter socket, 13 millimeter swivel with an extension, flathead, 3/8 ratchet, 18 millimeter wrench, 21 millimeter wrench, a pair of pliers and a magnet, and a size 6 hex. Some things that can help you with the job would be a wire brush to help clean off any threads for bolts to come off a little bit easier, and some heat for those really stuck bolts. First, securely lift or raise the car, then take off your wheel. Give me 21 millimeter lug nuts, and then we get access to the strut. Once we are inside the strut, one thing I like to do personally first is to loosen the knuckle bolts. So these are 21s on each side. I like to take my impact and just kind of get them to spin just like that. Breaks them free. Makes them a lot easier to come off. Next, we're going to be working on the sway bar link. It is an 18 millimeter and a hex. Now that we have our 18 mil sway bar link nut taken off, next we can work on the 21 millimeter bolt and nut for the knuckle. Now that we have removed the nut for the sway bar link, now we can work on the 21 mil bolts and nuts that hold on the strut to the knuckle. There's the first one. There's the second one. Now sometimes you can work these out by hand. This top one. Sometimes they need a little persuasion, just like that. And now the knuckle is free, and we can kind of tuck this over to the side. Another thing is, here is your speed sensor in ABS. So we can pull these out of the grommets. You have one on this side, one on the other side. And that's just gonna allow this to kind of just move a little bit more out of our way. Next, we will work on the 3 bolts holding it up to the top. Here we are on the passenger front side. At the top of the strut tower, we have these two 13 millimeter, but there's 3 that hold it on, and it sits way back there. Now Nissan was nice enough to give us a little access port. See if I can try to show it to you. But there it is, right down there, right from this access port, right on the top, right on the cowl. You can use a flathead or a pick to pull this right off, but let's get to it. All right, we're back underneath the vehicle. One thing I did forget to mention was that the brake line is attached to the strut. And so one thing I actually did forget to take off was this clip. Clip is really simple to take off. Just get a flathead, lightly tap the top, and then it should pop right out. Don't lose this, as we will be reusing it for the new strut. Now you just kind of work it out a little bit. We are kind of working a little backwards, but this should just fall right out. And there we go. One old strut. As you can see, the boot was torn. it is starting to leak a little bit, so the customer was right and we're getting it taken care of for him. So let's go ahead and install the new strut. When installing the new strut, it's important to make sure that you're installing the right one for the side. So make sure that the brake line holder lines up, and make sure the sway bar link hole lines up compared to the old one. We do have the right one here, and it looks like it came with new bolts for the top. So let's go ahead and get this installed. So as you can see here, I'm getting ready to reinstall the new strut. What I did is I kind of just slid it in, and then I took the sway bar link and I put it through its mounting hole. And then I just put the nut on, just a couple twists, so that way this stays in place as we go to install it. So let's go ahead and install it. It will be a little tricky kind of doing it by yourself. You kind of have to fight the sway bar just a little bit. So once you kind of finesse it up into its home, it's going to be held there in place by the sway bar. And then go ahead and take your new bolts and just try to line up one of them at the top. All right, got one of the bolts lined up, and then we can kind of just position this to where now it's nice, straight up and down. And then we can go ahead and finish with installing the rest of your 13mm bolts up top. Up at the top here, it can be a little tricky just to guide it down through this access port. So this portion of the cowl can actually pop right out. You just kind of grab it, squeeze it, and pull it right out. But now that I have that third bolt installed, we are all good to go. We come back down to the bottom here, and then here we have the strut nice, straight, and installed. So let's continue. Next, I'm going to install the steering knuckle back into the strut. So you're gonna kind of have to handle it just a little bit here. And it does look like the new strut, the gap for the knuckle to fit in is quite large, so it will pinch down on it. So we'll go ahead and just try to get it lined up the best we can. There we go. And the first bolt's in. Then I'll take the 21mm nut, slide it on. And then I will do the same for the bottom. Hopefully it's all nice and lined up for us. Just have to wiggle it around a little bit. Go ahead and get that put back in there. If you want, you can go ahead and reinstall your sensor here. Make sure it's nice and snug. Make sure the rubber grommets are pushed in all the way. Looks like one of my rubber grommets slid out on me a little bit, so we'll just put it back to its original position. And then we can feed our brake line back into the hole here. Go ahead and reinstall your brake line retainer clip. This one might take a little bit of iron persuasion here. Let's leave that for now, and then we can go ahead and snug up our 21mm bolts here. Then we'll take care of the sway bar. Okay, now that we have our strut installed, I like to do my mental checklist before I'm all done. We tighten down the knuckle bolts. They're nice and tight, nice and snug. We have the sway bar link. That's nice and tight, that's nice and snug. We got the retainer clip back on for the brake line. We've got the ABS and speed sensor line secure, and we have the 3 bolts up top, nice and tight. Now that we've done that, we can put the wheel back on and move on to the driver's side. We're back over here on the driver's side. Everything is pretty much the same. We have to remove our sensor line here, just to get a little bit of slack. We will have to remove our retainer clip. Brake line retainer clip. Better to do it now than when your strut is free. It does make it a little bit more difficult. There we go. Make sure you don't lose this. Now this is free, and then I will go ahead and grab my 21mm, and I'm just going to try to break these free just to get them moving. Okay, that one's moving. All right, that one's moving. Perfect. I'm gonna swap out for my 18mm and do the same thing for the sway bar link. Now this sway bar link, you can't see the threads at all. So I'm actually going to take the time to clean that up so that way this nut comes off a little bit easier. But now I'll go ahead and take off these 21mm bolts, and then I will work on that next. Okay, on the driver's side, we've got the knuckle bolts out, and we got the sway bar link out. Now this one, beforehand, you could barely see the threads, but now we kind of cleaned it up and got it off. Well, I was still having a hard time getting the bolt off, so something that you can do is just to introduce a little bit of heat. So what heat's gonna do is that if you direct it onto the nut, it's gonna help the nut literally expand. Heat is gonna let that nut expand, and it's gonna help it come off. Now, when you're using heat, you have to be very careful, because right behind it, you have the brake line, and you have to be careful because the yellow one gets especially hot. You don't want to burn this. And then with the sway bar link, you have this rubber boot right behind it full of grease. So you don't want to get it super hot, because you could end up melting the boot or making the grease boil over and seep out. So just use a little bit of heat to help expand that bolt, just so that way you can get it off. Just a helpful tip. We're back at the top of the driver's side to get the top of the strut bolt out. You have one here, you have one right back there, and the same thing on the passenger side. You have an access port And your third one is that one right down there. Now, unfortunately, you don't have a nice panel that you can pop off to get to it. So this one will be a little bit more tricky, but with a universal joint, a flashlight, and a little bit of time, you'll be able to get it out. Especially pertaining to this one, right back. Okay, we're still on the top of the driver's side. I wanted to give you guys a little tip. If you don't want to remove the whole cowl and remove the wiper arm to pop this up and everything like that, what I did is I took a magnet and I put the bolt on top of the magnet. And then I had these first two. They weren't tight, but they were still holding it in place. And then I guided down the magnet. And remember, it's just straight down. So right in the middle, right there, you go straight down with the magnet. And then I actually took my flashlight, which looks like it just died. And then you can see the bolt hole right there. So you can have one hand on the magnet lining up with the hole, and you can actually get it started just a little bit with the magnet, and then you can come back up top. And I will be honest, it was a little tricky, but I just took my impact driver with my 13 and just kept bobbing up and down until it sat on there, and until it went down, got nice and tight. Then I tighten down these other two, and then we're good to go to reassemble the rest. All right, we're here on the driver's side. We have the strut installed. Just going through that last mental checklist again. The top bolts are nice and tight. We have the sway bar link nice and tight and secure. We have the knuckle bolts nice and tight and secure. We have our sensors resecured. We have our brake line clip reinstalled. We are ready to put on the tire and get this car on the way. Just some quick tips for you guys. Just remember, on this passenger side, you can remove this portion of the cowl right here just to get your hand in there and get the bolt started. And then this is your access port, just right there, a little rubber flap. And remember, on the driver's side, you don't have that option. You do still have the rubber flap, but you can still guide it through with a magnet using a flashlight on the bottom side to guide that bolt down in there. Another thing, make sure you're using penetrative fluid on all of your nuts and bolts. It'll really help loosen everything up and come off nicely, especially if you are using hand tools. Another quick tip is to use a little bit of heat. A little bit of heat can go a long way to help open everything up to come off a little bit easier. Just remember, you are in some really sensitive areas. You have sensors, brake lines, and then these gas struts as well. You don't want to be heating them up too much. So I hope these tips help you and you guys can do this all on your own. That is a wrap on the 2014 Nissan Sentra front struts. We did the driver's side and passenger side. In all, it took me an hour and 30 minutes, including taking the time to record a few shots of what I've done. Difficulty, I would say a 2 out of 5. We did it with minimal power tools and some basic hand tools. I hope this video helped. You guys have a nice day.